Stop. Right there. Don't move your eyes. Don't adjust your breath. This is the moment everything tilted and you felt it before you understood it. Because the question isn't what did you wear? The question is why did reality flinch when you walked in wearing it? You didn't put on fabric. You put on a verdict. You didn't dress for the room. You dressed like the room had already lost the argument. And the city felt that imbalance instantly, like a sudden pressure drop in a sealed system. Conversations stuttered, smiles froze halfway to fake. Feeds glitched because the algorithm couldn't categorize what you were projecting. Not confidence, not rebellion, not style. Authority without permission. That's what scared them. See, people are comfortable with loud rebels. They can label those. They're comfortable with polished saints. They can exploit those. They're even comfortable with obvious villains, because villains follow patterns. But you walked in dressed like a paradox, holy posture, criminal calm, angel symmetry with a demon's timing. You looked lawful enough to pass inspection and dangerous enough to make the rule book sweat. That's why the city froze. Because you didn't signal status, you collapsed it. Status depends on comparison, on hierarchy, on approval loops. You showed up dressed like comparison had been deleted from your operating system. Like you weren't trying to be seen. You were trying to see who'd break first. And they did. You could feel it, couldn't you? That microscopic pause when people's nervous systems recalibrated. That split second where their instincts screamed something's wrong, but their logic couldn't explain why. That's the sound of power without narrative. That's what happens when you wear something that reflects back their own insecurity at high resolution. They asked if it was legal because legality is their last line of defense. When morality fails, they check rules. When rules fail, they check laws. When laws fail, they panic. You didn't violate a dress code. You violated expectations. And expectations are the glue holding their little reality together. That's the part nobody tells you. Clothing isn't about appearance. It's about permission structures. Most people dress to say, I belong. Some dress to say, I resist. You dress to say nothing at all. And that silence forced everyone else to project their fear onto you. Because when someone can't read you, they can't control you. You didn't look rich. You didn't look poor. You didn't look safe. You didn't look insane. You looked undocumented. Like a glitch the system didn't authorize but also couldn't remove without exposing itself. That's why the feeds bugged out. Algorithms are trained on trends, not anomalies. They can boost rebellion. They can monetize chaos. They can even aestheticize madness. But they cannot process intent without explanation. You were dressed like someone who already knows the ending, like someone who survived something unspeakable and came back with taste instead of trauma. Like pain refined into precision. And that's when they realized the truth that made them sick to their stomachs. This wasn't fashion. This was evolution. Every scar you never mentioned tightened the silhouette. Every betrayal cleaned up the lines. Every night you thought you were breaking rewired your sense of proportion. You don't dress to impress anymore. You dress to test. Who can stand next to you without shrinking? Who starts fidgeting? Who suddenly remembers an appointment they don't have? That's data. You've become the kind of presence that audits rooms without speaking. The kind of aesthetic that makes liars overcorrect and cowards overperform. The kind of look that turns confidence into a tell. They call it intimidating because that's easier than admitting the truth. You remind them of the version of themselves they aborted to survive. That's the duality they felt but couldn't name. saint posture, psychopath clarity. You don't need to hurt anyone. Your existence already rearranges the hierarchy. And deep down, they know it wasn't the clothes. It was the lack of apology inside them. You wore stillness in a world addicted to noise. You wore restraint in a culture that begs for validation. You wore self-trust like a loaded weapon with the safety off, but your finger nowhere near the trigger. That's why they froze. Because chaos is familiar, but controlled chaos with taste. That's terrifying. You've crossed into a phase where even your silence has posture, where even your shadow looks intentional, where people don't ask, "Who are you?" anymore. They ask, "What happened to you and why didn't it destroy you?" And the answer is etched into every choice you make now. Pain didn't break you. It edited you. So let them whisper. Let them zoom in on screenshots. Let them argue in comment sections about whether what you're doing should be allowed. Because the moment they ask if it's legal, they've already admitted it's powerful. And you didn't even raise your voice. And here's the part they won't say out loud. The part that keeps replaying in their heads at night while they pretend it was just an outfit. They didn't feel threatened by what you wore. They felt exposed by how naturally you wore it. Because confidence can be faked. Ego can be borrowed. Trends can be copied. But what you walked in wearing was integration. Every fracture in you stitched together without apology. Every contradiction finally aligned instead of hidden. You weren't trying to look powerful. You looked like power had already passed through you and left residue. That's what rattles people, not the bold ones, not the loud ones, the finished ones. They sensed it immediately. The absence of hunger. You weren't fishing for approval. You weren't scanning the room to see who mattered. You weren't performing. You were present, and presence is lethal in a world addicted to performance. That's why their smiles came late. That's why compliments felt off-tempo. That's why even the confident ones suddenly over-explained themselves. Your stillness disrupted their scripts. You see, most people dress to broadcast intention. I want attention. I want respect. I want desire. I want safety. You dressed like you wanted nothing from them. That broke the exchange rate. Because if you don't need anything, they have no leverage, no hook, no angle, no entry point. And the system hates people it can't extract from. So they tried to reduce it. Call it fashion. Call it shock. Call it too much. Call it trying too hard. But deep down, their nervous systems knew better. They felt the echo of someone who's been tested in rooms where clothing didn't matter, and survived anyway. That's why the word legal came up. Because legality is about containment. And you didn't look containable. You looked like someone who learned the rules so thoroughly that breaking them became unnecessary. Like someone who can walk through fire in clean shoes because the fire already knows your name. You didn't dress above them. You dressed outside them. And that's the most unforgivable move of all. Because hierarchy only works if everyone agrees to play. You didn't opt out loudly. You didn't protest. You didn't posture. You simply existed as proof that the latter is optional. That's why even the watchers froze. The ones who pride themselves on being unshakable. The ones who think they've seen every archetype. They hadn't seen this. Someone calm after chaos. Elegant after erosion. Sharp without hostility. You weren't dressed like a threat. You were dressed like aftermath. And aftermath scares people more than danger, because it implies something already happened, and they missed it. They felt late, behind, unprepared. That's why their questions weren't curious. They were defensive. Is this allowed? Is this acceptable? Is this okay? What they were really asking was, are we still safe if people like you exist? And the answer terrified them, because you are the result of pressure applied too long in the wrong direction. You are what happens when someone endures humiliation, silence, betrayal, restraint, and metabolizes it instead of leaking it. You don't radiate rage, you radiate control. And control without cruelty confuses predators. It denies them the justification they rely on. You didn't come to dominate. You came already undominated. That's why even when you said nothing, the room rearranged itself around you. That's why eyes tracked you unconsciously. That's why people remembered details about you they couldn't recall later. Your presence rewrote priority. And here's the most dangerous part. The part that makes this irreversible. You didn't enjoy their discomfort. You noticed it, cataloged it, learned from it. That's the mark of someone who's no longer reactive. You're not here to shock anymore. Shock is a side effect now. You're here because you've crossed into a phase where alignment looks illegal to the misaligned, where coherence looks threatening to chaos, where self-trust looks like rebellion to obedience-trained minds. So let them analyze screenshots. Let them debate intention. Let them try to reverse engineer your effect. They'll miss the point every time. Because what you wore wasn't meant to be understood. It was meant to be felt. And they felt it. Every single one of them. That's why the city froze. That's why the feeds stuttered. That's why the question keeps echoing. What the hell did you wear? They're asking the wrong thing. They should be asking what you became. And here's where it turns from curiosity into fear. Because once they start asking what you became, they're forced to confront what they never will. You see it in the way their gaze lingers a second too long. Not admiration, assessment. Like they're trying to identify the moment you stopped being like them. They want a timestamp, a breakdown, a scandal, a mistake they can point to and say, there. That's where it went wrong. But there is no single moment. That's what destroys their sense of order. You didn't snap. You didn't spiral. You didn't fall apart in a way they could gossip about. You calcified under pressure, slowly, silently, irreversibly, and now you wear the result. Every choice you make now feels deliberate, because it is. You don't dress impulsively anymore. You don't move accidentally. You don't enter spaces without already understanding the geometry of power inside them. You learned that from pain. Pain taught you angles. Pain taught you timing. Pain taught you when to be visible and when to disappear into plain sight. So when you walked in wearing that, whatever that was, the city didn't see clothes. It saw someone who knows when to arrive. That's why everything stalled, because arrival is the one thing no one is prepared for. They're trained for announcements, for launches, for hype cycles, for drama. They are not trained for someone who arrives fully formed, already calibrated, already indifferent to applause. You didn't enter like a spark. You entered like a verdict being enforced. And the paradox is this. You didn't look aggressive. You didn't look hostile. You didn't look angry. You looked finished. That's what short-circuited their instincts. Because unfinished people telegraph need. They over-decorate, they over-explain, they overdress to compensate for internal instability. You stripped all that away. What you wore had restraint in its bones. Every line said, I chose this. Every absence said, I didn't need the rest. That kind of self-editing is terrifying. It tells the world you know what to remove. And anyone who knows what to remove eventually knows what to destroy. That's why even authority hesitated around you. Because authority depends on uncertainty, on hesitation, on people second-guessing themselves. You didn't second-guess. You didn't scan for cues. You didn't wait for permission. You moved like someone who already checked the exits and decided they wouldn't need them. And here's the part that really destabilized them, the part they'll never admit. You weren't trying to be unforgettable. You were comfortable. Comfort is the real flex. Anyone can perform confidence for a night. Anyone can borrow swagger. Anyone can shock a room once, but comfort? Comfort only comes from surviving long enough to trust yourself again. That's why the question, is this legal, carried panic inside it. Because legality is about control. And you looked uncontrollable without being chaotic. You looked like someone who wouldn't resist arrest. Because you'd already escaped the system that matters. You don't rebel against the rules anymore. You walk like you've outgrown them. And that's why the feeds glitched. Because algorithms rely on predictable desire. They boost what people want to be. They punish what people can't place. You weren't aspirational in the usual sense. You were disruptive to aspiration itself. You didn't make people want to copy you. You made them want to understand themselves. And that's dangerous. Because self-awareness destabilizes markets. It dissolves hierarchies. It erodes manipulation. So the system tried to flatten you into an image, a trend, a moment. But something resisted compression, because what you wore wasn't an expression. It was a signal to anyone paying attention that the old incentives no longer work on you. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to be feared. You're not even here to be remembered. You're here because you exist now, in a frequency that forces others to confront their own fragmentation. And that confrontation hurts. That's why even when you left, the room didn't recover. People kept replaying it, reframing it, trying to decode it. They'll keep doing that. Because once someone sees a human being who is no longer negotiating their identity, they can't unsee it. You became proof. Proof that suffering doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it distills. Proof that silence can be louder than dominance. That restraint can outweigh aggression. That presence can bend rooms without effort. So let them keep asking what you wore. They're still stuck at the surface. What they felt wasn't fabric. It wasn't style. It wasn't audacity. It was the gravitational pull of someone who survived themselves and came back with alignment instead of excuses. And now, everywhere you go, the environment has to adjust, not because you demand it, but because you no longer adapt to it. And that's when it crosses the point of no return. Because once the environment adapts to you, it can never go back to pretending you were just another face in the crowd. You felt it in the aftermath. Not applause, not praise. Something quieter, something heavier. People recalibrating. You walked out and the city didn't exhale. It held its breath. Because systems can recover from noise, but they struggle with signal. You didn't spike emotion, you altered baseline. That's why people didn't rush to copy you. They hesitated, because imitation requires safety, and you didn't look safe in the way trends are safe. You looked like someone who doesn't need external validation to remain intact. And that terrifies a culture built on mirrors. Here's the truth they're circling but can't land on. You're no longer advertising who you are. You're documenting what survived. Every element of what you wore carried the weight of selection, not decoration, not excess, selection. Only what earned the right to stay made it through. That's how soldiers pack. That's how fugitives think. That's how survivors move when they stop hoping and start knowing. You didn't dress for attention. You dressed like someone who has already been watched. That's the subtext they felt crawling up their spines. Your posture didn't ask to be seen. It assumed observation. Your stillness wasn't passive, it was measured. And people who live on performance instinctively recognize those who've lived under pressure. They don't know why, but their bodies know. That's why even confident people started adjusting themselves around you, straightening, softening, overcompensating. Because confidence hates proximity to certainty. Certainty doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't compete. It doesn't escalate. It just stands there unblinking, while everyone else negotiates their reflection in it. That's what you wore. A mirror with no flattery. And when people look into something like that, they don't see you. They see the parts of themselves they've been postponing. That's why the reactions weren't uniform. Some felt inspired, some felt angry, some felt exposed, some felt small. Same stimulus, different fractures. You didn't divide the room by status or taste. You divided it by integration. Those who had done the work felt energized. Those who hadn't felt threatened. That's always the split. And here's the thing they can't handle. You didn't weaponize it. You didn't smirk. You didn't flex. You didn't lean into dominance. You let the moment exist without feeding it. That restraint is what made it echo. Because the most dangerous people aren't the ones who enjoy power. They're the ones who don't need it to feel real. You've crossed into that territory now, where your presence doesn't escalate situations, it clarifies them. Where your silence doesn't de-escalate, it reveals. People show themselves around you without realizing it. They rush, they justify, they posture, they overshare. Because they sense you're not playing the same game. And that's why, is this even legal? Wasn't about clothing. It was about precedent. If someone can move like you without breaking rules, if someone can command space without dominance, if someone can disrupt hierarchy without attacking it, then the entire system starts to look fragile. Because it means the cage was never locked. People just forgot they could stand up. And you reminded them without saying a word. You're not rebellion. Rebellion still needs an enemy. You're post-permission. You don't ask. You don't resist. You don't comply. You choose. And choice, once embodied, rewrites everything around it. That's why this isn't a moment. It's a phase shift. You didn't have a fit that broke the internet. You had a presence that broke compliance conditioning. Now people are going to test you. Some will try to bait you into reaction. Some will try to flatter you into performance. Some will try to label you so they can neutralize you. Let them. You're not here to correct their narrative. You already moved past the part of life where being misunderstood feels dangerous. Misunderstanding is just proof you're ahead of their language. And the funniest part, the part that would make them sick if they fully grasped it. You're not even at your final form. This is just what alignment looks like mid-evolution. What happens when someone survives enough chaos to stop outsourcing their identity. What happens when pain sharpens instead of scars. What happens when you stop dressing for the world and start dressing for truth. So let the city whisper, let the feeds stutter, let legality be questioned. Those are symptoms. What you triggered wasn't controversy, it was recognition. And recognition, once activated, doesn't fade. Every room you enter now will remember you longer than you stay. Every system you brush against will feel slightly less stable. Every person who sensed it but couldn't explain, it will carry that discomfort home with them. Because they didn't just see an outfit, they saw the outline of someone who already walked through the fire they're still negotiating with. And the question won't stop evolving. It won't be, "What did you wear?" much longer. Soon it'll become quieter, more personal, more dangerous. How did you become like that? And why didn't it destroy you?